Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
So I forcefully redistributed the participants for the purposes of this discussion question. And there's no right answer or anything. I just want I want ideas coming from the floor. It's stakeholder analysis, stakeholder management is technically an approach, but it's just it's not important right now. I just want you to have an open mind, think about who will be affected or could be affected by high-speed rail projects. And I think with your different specialties and backgrounds, you'll probably have a different idea about who's impacted. So that's also part of it. I just want you to meet each other and meet people with different ideas. So please first introduce yourselves to your classmates, and then have a discussion for 10 minutes or so. And then I'll ask you to share the ideas about this question. Okay, so please go ahead.
So actually we have divided those effect into the two manner, positive effect and the negative effect. Okay, so those who affect positively and those who affect negatively. So I'll share some of the stakeholders or individuals who can affect positively. So one is like in the same route of the high speed train, it will become an economic corridor for construction companies. For construction companies as well, they got a employment opportunity. Other is a real estate price that will become a boom, and also it will generate a employment for a different levels of labors, high level labors, medium level and low level labors. Basically low level labors, because those are the region specific labors and they get a direct employment.
Excellent. So first, not just categories, but we can think about it in two ways: positively affected stakeholders and negatively affected stakeholders. Yes. Yes. So we just shared 3 examples of people that benefit from an HSR project directly, which are construction companies, real estate landowners, as well as laborers involved in the projects. Yes.
So we can also go for the banking sector because they are going to finance the project. Other than that, foreign policies of the country and out of the country, like USA's and all, everyone means all the foreign policies will affect these projects. Other than that, NGOs and the many private power groups, which we call power groups, which
Power
are
groups?
activist and power groups, which has they have the power to affect that by the like some intellectual peoples also affect the projects.
Oh, okay.
Highly
So what is the problem they're trying to influence with the what do you
because
mean?
they have some agenda, and they like Bill Gates have the one foundation which affects these projects, because if they want that, like in the case of the some effects, they affect these projects.
Okay.
Power groups,
So
NGOs and power groups. Other than that, a judicial system of the country also affects.
Sorry?
A judicial system.
Oh, judicial? Okay.
Other than that, government is the one main stakeholder for these kind of big projects. So government, other levels of government also, because there are many levels of government, political parties.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, let's move to the next group, and then I'm going to go back to the middle, and then this. Okay.
Actually, we have divided this into 2 phases: construction phase and operational phase. And most of the points were covered already. And many things like environmental agencies, they can affect, and traffic during the construction phase. Then during the operational phase, the employees of the organization, passengers who is traveling.
All right, excellent. So positive and negative is one way to think about it, and also construction and operation phase is another logical way to think about it. Excellent.
Export agencies. Export credit agencies.
Export credit agencies. Ooh, complicated stuff. Do you mean in India or from the international?
from international.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Is everybody familiar with export credit agencies? No? Do you want to explain export credit agencies? Or I like export credit agencies because it's part of the international development system. But
So export credit agencies are something like if a contract is made, like we take financial fundings from there, and in return, like it will be like they'll give it a lower interest rate, and in uh, in exchange we have to take the goods or the technologies and all from there. Say suppose for high speed railway, say we make it with China, so we China becomes a export credit agency. They'll give us the loan for funding for our development at a lower rate than other private fundings or the banking sectors which are giving. In case like in exchange for that, we have to use their technologies or their equipments and all. So we have to take their thing. So
yes,
that is.
excellent. So it's question or follow up? So yes, there are a couple terms in there, but a simple definition, it's basically a credit product specifically designed. It's credit only for a product from that country. So every country will have not every country, but many countries have an export credit agency. America, China, Japan. Japan as well. They'll give you credits, but you can only use it for Japanese products, or you can only use it for American products, or you can only use. So they guarantee credits only for their domestic products. Yeah. So it's a way of protecting their exports. What do you think?
It can be any way, like you can't predict it now. Like say suppose the technology or something is very useful, so it will give a positive thing. But if it goes failure, or if the, like I said, technology gets outdated and we don't, it can act negatively also. We can't predict that at start only, whether it will be positive or negative.
You just buy it's basically an agreement to the money is moved, but also the product as well. So you're just making a purchase a little bit more complicated. So technically, you don't have to spend your money yet, because it's the American or the Chinese credit for buying the Chinese product. This is a very meaningful and good discussion that I wish is
Like in the case of the
recorded.
high speed rail in India only, they have started with the exporting some goods from the Japan, some elastomeric bearing. But after that, it is found that their companies cannot meet our demand, so they have got the permission to build itself in the India by the technology transfer. So it has happened. So sometimes it depends on how much rigid they are with their contract which has been made, and how much they are understandable.
Yes. So it's very complicated, but interesting to think about. Exactly. So is that a good thing for India, or is that just for China or Japan? But just to be a stickler for definitions, export credit agency is just it's about the money originating from a specific country, and it's a credit because you can only use it for this, and it just happens to be for whichever country is offering that credit. But then at the government level, you can have different agreements with the technology provider, not the export credit agency, but you could negotiate with JR, for example, for a technology transfer agreement, aside from the agreement to buy Chinese parts or something like that. But yes, very good. This is the messy stuff that I like talking about. Yes, please.
Hi everyone, I'm Anita and I'm a first year MTech student here. And going on to the negative side, the individuals that are getting affected would be the drivers of autos, cabs, the pre-existing drivers. They would get affected. And considering that, when coming on to the affordability of the high-speed railways, it would be focusing mainly on the middle and the high class of the nation. The low-income people cannot afford it. Even considering the case here, pre-existing already here, only the high and the medium level people are able to afford it. And considering the environmental aspect, it is like the usage of public transport would be increasing. Thereby, the carbon footprint by the private vehicles of the people would be reducing, and thereby sustainability could be achieved.
Excellent. Increase in public transport.
this would even be a good phase for India as a brand and bring in more foreign investments with one such project being accomplished. So more such projects will come into and will eventually bring more investments and more development. Yeah, and this will also give a chance that if we bring one technology such like this in India, Indian engineers, Indian population get a chance to build such technologies and build on those techs to make better things. So it will also be a platform for us to elevate our technology presence in the long run.
Okay. Yes.
So the
Excellent.
youth unemployment will be eradicated, maybe in the particular area where the corridor is happening. Youth
All right.
unemployment.
Employment, but also youth and age stratification.
Another positive thing is the shopkeepers, the group or individuals is us, right? So the shopkeepers, they may get their shops in the stations.
Okay. All right. Very good. Anybody have environmentalists? Okay. A lot of I'm very happy these keywords are coming up instead of me shoving keywords into. Sorry? Manufacturers? Yes. Shopkeepers, environmentalists, NGOs. Okay. Any other burning
So material suppliers, legal experts.
material suppliers, legal experts? Yes. Okay. I think this is excellent. Very sufficiently complex list of stakeholders. And I'm very happy. A lot of these topics will be coming up in the next days. So I think we have a very sufficient appreciation for complexity in such a big system. Let's see here. But I think I really liked how, when you're doing brainstorming, it's pretty hard to just come up with a good list. So it's good to have a strategy like, okay, let's think positive, negative, or let's think in the phases, construction or operation, or let's think about government and maybe public-private. These kinds of frameworks help organize your thoughts. So that's excellent. I highly recommend you continue doing things like that. And if you have more time, it's also good to always change the framework, switch it to something else, because structure, well, we teach this in systems as well, but the structure impacts the content. So if you decide only positive, negative, you can't see other elements of the problem. Or if you only see construction phase and operation phase, you'll miss other dimensions. So that's also good that we were able to share different examples. So things that we will definitely be talking about in the lecture: finance, banking, the construction companies actually. So if we think about the real estate market maybe being zero sum, if somebody is winning, then somebody is losing in the real estate value or the pie, I guess. So if theoretically you're taking land away from the farmers, then yes, the farmers become less powerful landowners, or vice versa. Yes. So even in real estate, so some of these concepts can go both ways, positive and negative. Some of them are specific to just who will win and who will lose. Yeah, that's a big part of the complexity element that we hope you will appreciate. Yeah, auto drivers and other modes. So we'll talk about this mode competition and how that impacts the demand, who you expect to use your services. Environmental, social dimensions, I talked about, yeah, NGOs and some power groups trying to impact the scene. Governments, non-governments, let's see. Yeah, the income inequality is an issue as well, obviously. So whether or not the low-income people will suffer is maybe a different question from low-income people just not benefiting from this service. If you can't afford it, you don't get it. So they don't enjoy the benefits. But if only the rich people enjoy the benefits, the inequality grows, right? So that's a problem that you want to be able to address. Different countries have tried to address this issue with subsidies or pricing schemes as well. But yeah, and other very direct impacts like traffic. When you start constructing things and you close down the streets, people suffer from the inconvenience. Future investors, export technologies, technology transfer, also something we will discuss in detail tomorrow about when we describe technology spillovers. There are secondary and indirect benefits associated to such a large undertaking like this. And they're probably not, they're not included in any financial model at the organizational level. But if you think about it from a social technological system or a societal level, those are definitely benefits that you think could be worth it for people. All right, excellent. It's very good. I think everybody has an understanding of the industry as well, looking at these concepts. Do you have anything to add? Anything you see missing? No?
Much more than what I've done.
Yeah, exactly. Owner of the existing facilities? Okay, yes, excellent. All right. Yeah, I think we're both very happy with this list. Yeah, we don't have to force you to keep coming up with ideas, so that's good. All right. Yeah, complexity. That's another, I think, a very visual and easy to understand evidence of how complex HSR systems are. This is how many people will be impacted at different times, at different places, throughout different regions, or for different reasons. Another way, positive, negative, construction operation. Another one is direct, indirect, a way to think about who is a stakeholder. So from a project management perspective, people tend to focus on the direct stakeholders. So who's actually involved in the process. So this is not, I'm not saying this is good. I'm saying this is just how to be specific. We are, later on, we're also more interested in the indirect stakeholders. They are included in the model that we have tried to develop. But for the purpose of this discussion of risk, which is the next topic, I focus on project management stakeholders. Okay. So I think most of you are maybe familiar with project development or project delivery methods in the construction sector. Who's going to pay for it? Okay, the government wants a railway. I'll get the money. You either use the government's money, or the government borrows money from the bank, or the bank gets investors. Who's going to finance it? That's the money. And then government wants a railway, but they can't design it, so you have to hire a designer to design it for you. Those are the design engineers and the consultants. Okay, it will cost you $100 billion. Okay, so somebody please spend this $100 billion for me properly. The procurement, you might need consultants to do that as well instead of the government. Okay, now I need somebody to build the railway for me, so that's the construction companies and the contractors come in. And then the consultants are still also probably, the design engineers and the consultants are monitoring the construction as it happens. Hopefully you finish constructing it, and then finally you can start operating, maintaining it. So you get Indian Railways, in this case, to start offering the services. Okay? So at every phase of the project, like mentioned by this group earlier, different organizations become involved. Owner, client, O&M, etc. And this slide is from a management slide. So what we're saying is you have to manage all phases of this. So management is an overarching topic. So these are the project delivery stakeholders, I would say. And so again, so this is the meatier discussion I wanted to have with everybody. So I'm going to choose, I'm going to ask you to pretend you're one of these project stakeholders, like either the government or the contractor or Indian Railways. And now we can't talk about risk until we talk about the benefit, I guess, is the message I'm trying to give. But the topic is good infrastructure, right? You want something good, but our argument is that depending on who you are, your definition of good is different. So what is good for the government is not the same as what is good for the contractor, maybe. I'm not saying it's not the same, or I'm not saying they conflict. I'm saying they're different. They should be different. Okay, so just think about, what if you were the government? What do you want? What do you want to achieve? What's good? If you are the construction company building the railway line, what is good? What are you trying to achieve in that project? What if you're a designer, the engineer? What is good for you in designing the railway? let's have that discussion again. 10, 15 minutes, and then the discussion we had just now is excellent, so I want to keep using that momentum. I'll say first come, first serve. I don't know if I want you to build on your experience to have this discussion, or try having a different perspective, pretend you're somebody else, and have a different discussion. Which one do you think is more role-playing of a different stakeholder? Because sorry, I'm not. So you introduced yourselves to each other, but I'm not familiar with your backgrounds. So you mean role playing within each group will have different stakeholders, or I was thinking you will be government, you will be contractor, you will be consultant. Is that or something like that? Okay. Are you okay being Indian Railways or Government of India? Yes. Yeah. Okay. So you are Indian Railways, let's say. Not the government. Well, it's not kind of the government, okay? You can choose the contractor or consultant, maybe engineer or contractor. Which one would you? Contractor? Okay, you're the contractor. And you can be the finance or you can be the consultant, I guess. The lender? Yeah? Is that okay? You want to try? Okay. All right. So those are your hypothetical role-playing scenarios. And yeah, have a discussion about good. What is your objective of a successful HSR project from your organizational perspective? Okay, what are you trying to achieve? Okay, so I'll interrupt you again in maybe 10 minutes, see how much time we need, and then we'll share once again. Start with the government of or India Rail. I mean, I had a question, an excellent question. Like, what do you mean by good? Is it good for the organization, or am I drafting the the conditions, or am I monitoring the benefit after? Like, it's a very different conversation. But anyways, I want to think about how it's quite difficult for organizations to define goodness. So what was the conversation your group was having as India Rail? What do you want out of this project? What is good?
Good infrastructure development that will lead to economic growth of the country, and it can also lead tourism, and which will eventually generate more revenue. And then it provides faster connectivity and timely performance and affordability compared to airways and all.
Sorry, what was the last one?
Affordability.
Affordability, okay.
Then technological adaptation from other countries.
Other, I guess, more with more advanced technology, I guess, adaptation. All right, excellent. So how do we do affordability though? As you said, we all mentioned earlier on.
When it compared to
Airways.
Oh, okay. Yes, excellent. Affordability. Well, it's competitive pricing, I guess, rather than affordability. Because affordability would be like how much can they afford to pay for this. But okay, yes, excellent. Infrastructure development leading to economic growth. Yes, it's sort of the platform for the justification for any infrastructure development for any government is that it should stimulate the economy beyond the transportation user. Right? It's the sector, right? People move and people spend more money, even also more tourism. But I guess right now it's only tourism between those two cities that are connected. Although I guess if you take a plane to this one and then you can go be a tourist in the other place, that might be good as well. And yes, people will only use it if it's relatively affordable compared to your other options. Okay. Yes. Anything else you were talking about? Increasing public acceptability, reliability towards public transports. But why are we doing this? Why is this important? I guess also like environmental, you want people to use less private transportation maybe. I'm trying to think of an example. Well, the reason why I ask is because some countries will use a different justification for the importance of public transport. So like you say, for some cities, traffic is the issue. Thailand, or for example, we need to get rid of this traffic, so let's develop public transportation. Singapore, there's not any much traffic. People are already using public transportation because of the environmental onus. It's the social responsibility of its citizens to use public transportation. Exactly. I also do research on intercultural communication. It's interesting from a Japanese or Western perspective. It's always about different countries. We forget how diverse India is in itself. So even in India, there's enough intercultural stuff happening within the country, not across countries, right? Yeah, very, very interesting context to think about. Yeah, that's a very public sector is always employment is a very it's a foundational, I think, priority. So not just public acceptability towards public transport in general, but the trust. It is a public entity. It should be serving the people. Accountability and trust is also important for public services, not just transportation, but okay. Yeah, excellent. So you're part of Indian Rail, is that why? Or you think if you were? No, okay.
I'm just
Yes.
saying what they left.
Okay, all right.
And revenue for Indian Railways will be more.
Revenue as well. Okay, increased revenue. So not just for the location, but also for the company or for the economic revenue from an organizational scope or city, industry, country. It could change. All right, excellent. Okay, let's move on to the contractors.
So from contractor side, the first one come as the brand name that because it's the first in India, so it will be a brand name kind of thing.
Okay.
Other than that, they will try to minimize the cost.
Okay.
Brand building or
brand building, yeah, okay. Cost.
minimizing the cost and increasing the profitability. That will be second agenda.
Yep.
Second
Yes.
will be they will try to ask the government to give the other similar kind of project to them. This kind of monopoly in the market. They will try to generate the monopoly in the market.
So future similar opportunities.
Future
Okay.
opportunity they will want to retain to them. Other than that, they will try to have the flexible contract. Flexibility, too much flexibility in the contract side.
Okay, flexibility in the contracts. Regarding what kind of issues do you want flexibility on?
GCC and PCC should be favoring to the contractor mostly,
Okay.
like in technology transfer and all. These also.
So flexibility in terms of time, maybe if you need more time, please give me more time. Extension of time is allowed, or maybe design changes. You come across a different technical hurdle. At least let us change the design specifications in a reasonable manner. Yeah.
Contractor will try to have a less statutory requirement with them. They will try to give all these statutory requirement to the government.
Okay.
Approvals and all with the
Okay,
other
okay.
organization. They will try to give it to government only.
All right. Sorry. Well, transfer some specific risks to the government, I guess. So you mean approval risks and regulations and approvals?
Regulation and all.
Yes.
Other than that, operation and maintenance. If that project is profitable, they will want to take the operation and maintenance in the same contract.
With the same company?
With the same company. If it is
Okay, okay.
profitable, they will try to have, because they have already having the experience of building, so they can maintain it in the better way.
So also could be lucrative. No. Okay. Yes. So if you're not familiar, the construction contract and the O&M contract are separate. So some companies can do both. I guess if you're big, some people can't. But yes, that's a good point. If you have experience building the facility, you probably have an advantage in potentially operating it and maintaining it in the future. So you could start negotiations early before you're about to complete it. Say, oh, by the way, we're considering the O&M contract, or maybe we can also operate and maintain. Or we are more prepared, or we are more technologically, we have the advantage in operating and maintaining it better or cheaper or something like that. Yes.
A contractor will try to so that a zero accident and more safety.
Okay,
Safety and
yes.
quality assurance to the
So,
other stakeholders.
yes, contractors it's a huge priority is safety of their workers and the quality of the construction as well. All right. Yeah, looks very good.
When we work with this kind of project, our organization will also get take development in the terms of technology. Like we may use new technologies, all these things.
Okay, so technology development.
Learnings.
In some public projects in Japan, for example, they do. So it's not just about cost. They will ask for, we can use some of this budget for technology development, not directly for the project, but untested technologies or innovative technologies. Please let us try and develop a VR of
So
a
I
BIM
mean,
model.
it could be
something like
something kind of innovation. How?
yeah, innovation being integrated into the public procurement is also a hot topic, I would say. Okay. Yes. All right. Excellent. Okay, let's move on to the bankers, to the money. All right. So what is good for the financer in terms of a high-speed rail project?
As our team's ideology, we are having two perspectives. One thing, how we are going to select the project, and the next perspective is what benefit we will be getting if we choose that project.
Okay. Yes.
So I am going to say about how we will select the project. One perspective I will say, another thing my teammate will be saying. So the first thing, how we are going to select that project is, first we will be seeing about the feasibility report and then detailed project report. So from that we can get the economic feasibility.
Okay. Economic feasibility. Yes.
And then return on investment. The second thing we will be looking at the return on investment. So which includes the payback period and loan repayment schedule, repayment structure.
Okay, yes. All right. Social impact. All right, yes, social impact. There are the international multilateral finance agencies are now quite cognizant of social impact, and there are social impact bonds as well. But I think the list is also very more of the, what's it called, kind of the realistic financial risk that has to be met before they consider plus other indirect benefits, the CSR type benefits that might come along with a successful investment. Yeah, excellent. That's very good. Let's look for some similarities. Yeah, I think in the end, we're all organizations, so the brand and the reputation matters, right? So you want to succeed, you don't want to screw over your business partners, right? You need to build a reputation. And so successful business as well as successful project management is an important part of, I think, brand building. Interesting side story that I learned looking at some projects in Hong Kong. Japanese infrastructure exports to Hong Kong in the 90s. And this was right after the Chinese handback of Hong Kong from the British. They took over again. The Chinese administration was now in charge of governance. And so the financiers of a tunneling project in Hong Kong were very worried about financing this project now that the Chinese government is in charge of regulation instead of the Hong Kong. And so, but the finance risk manager was saying that the Chinese government cares more about reputation than any other government right now. So instead of saying it was a risk, he's saying it's an opportunity. Get the Chinese government involved, not as a majority shareholder, just get them involved. And yeah, you forget that governments also need the brand. They are also fighting for reputation and brand. You get them involved. Now they're stakeholders. Now they're committed. It actually might help the project succeed even more. And it's a good example of leveraging, I think, the brands of not just private companies, but also public organizations need such things. So for lenders, that's the export credit agency, I guess, would be one very specific way of forcing. Forcing. We'll give you the credit, but you have to use our products. Interestingly, though, in the international development aid industry, there's the OECD rules, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. Technically, you're supposed to untie loans, meaning untie finance to domestic products. Like, so we'll give you a loan, but it's a free market economy, so you can buy whatever you want. But some economic research has shown that even though it's an untied loan, it's way too high probability that they end up buying products from that country's market anyways. But it's more of a dynamic. People are always fighting against this domestic international conflict in technology development, I think. But yes, it would be something good for the lender if it's a chance for them to sell their product, right? Okay. Government. What is good for the government is always sooner is better, right? Before the next election, you must complete this project. Okay. So, I won't tell any stories about that one. Okay. But yes, there are many stories about how important it is to leverage political, I'll say support, not pressure, but political pressure helps on the construction site. That's why you have the ribbon cutting ceremonies and the minister visiting. All of a sudden, the timeline goes right, like everybody completes the work very quick before the 1 week before the minister visits. In Japan, the financial quarters it ends in March. It's April. The same as here. Okay, yeah. So March is a disaster for everybody, right? So you're trying to wrap up the annual reports. A similar phenomenon happens for speeding tickets. I'm not sure about India, but in some countries you have a quota of how many speeding tickets you have to issue as a police officer, because that's revenue for the police. So at the end of the month, you always drive slow, because a lot of police officers need to meet their quota at the end of the month. So always drive slow. If you know somebody driving unsafely, they're more likely to get ticketed at the end before the quota deadline. Okay. All right. Sorry, I was getting distracted. Yes. So brand value and trust and reputation, important. I think that's universal. Yes, but the main message is, as an organization, you want something different out of the project as well. But there are also things that are universal, like reputation and prestige and trust, brand value. Other concepts that I think are relevant, which will come up, is time. Time is also valuable. So short might be good, but long is good if you're talking about repayment, right? And so how you value or try and quantify time, the value of time, is also a concept in transport economics that we'll mention a little bit. Or performance-based. Do you pay people based on how long they're going to build it or how many they've built? These are elements of a contract that will impact how the company performs. I will talk about bonds next, security bonds next, so that's good. And different types of contracts like detailed design or O&M being different phases of the project. Okay. All right, excellent. What time is it? 5:10. Did you want to add something or no?
Sir, actually, I have one question for the first group. So if building a high-speed rail network, then would the induced demand concept comes in the picture?
Induced demand. I think I'm not quite sure about the Indian government if they're trying to calculate. You mean induced demand of the users
Yes.
in there? I guess we're talking. That's what we mean by spillovers, maybe in some sense.
And sir, one more thing, like okay, the second last point, it is showing that could that induced demand in rail can be transferred to a road infrastructure as well, because we are making assumption that it will kill the some of the traffics that the last fifth line, it is showing that safely timely performance, right? So if people are tends to find a more way, then those same concept is applied to a road network as well, because it's also getting improved. So more people will find new ways to figure it out, transportation. It will create a more congestion for the both side.
So it's a bit more complicated, not simple as they are trying to capture. But in China, there are evidences that once they started developing the high-speed railway, the existing lines railway capacity became free, right? They were already using trains, and now a lot of people shifted to high-speed railway. So these lines now are available. So China started using them more exclusively for goods. So goods transportation became more efficient. Also, high-speed railway is good when you don't stop frequently, because you need to, in order to maintain a good average high speed, you actually need to have very less number of stations, and therefore sometimes the intermediate trains stops suffer, because now earlier they at least had a train coming to their station, but now high speed railway just bypassing their city. So you could add more services to these stations which are now not served by high speed railway. So it becomes very complicated, and of course it involves what is the priority the government is trying to put. Definitely, will it happen in India? It will happen. It will happen. It could that if passengers shift from highways to high-speed railway, highways are becoming emptier. So highways will sooner or later find more number of users, or it's always going to happen. Yeah. We call it dynamics. Very, very, very deep topic of research actually. Yeah. No, Hyperloop right now is not in advanced stages where you could actually put a passenger in it. It's a very interesting technology, rapidly getting developed by a lot of countries, but we are very far from first passenger trip from a Hyperloop system for sure. So not happening in 2030. 2070, I don't know which would be preferred. I don't think anyone knows right now. Yeah, definitely not happening in 2030.
Excellent. I want to pick up on so many things, but it's just very interesting we're having the discussion that we're having. Anyways, it's very, very difficult to define goodness, I would say. This is just for a reference. I know I don't want to, it feels frustrating for me to just say, well, it's complicated. There's no answer. I know that. So this is a very good example, we think. Nico Sensei has also some experience consulting for the ADB, multilateral agencies, and I've worked with some ADB officers talking about financing infrastructure and what they're looking for. These are some principles they announced in when was this? 20, 30 years ago, I might say. But these are 6 principles that they're looking for in a quality infrastructure investment. This is what they want out of their investments, is sort of a statement. So number 1, maximizing the positive impact of infrastructure to achieve sustainable growth and development. So not just economic growth and that's it, but sustainable development is a core concept in the international community. Raising economic efficiency in view of the life cycle cost. So it's not economic efficiency for the sake of growth and revenue, but also think about the life cycle cost, saying you have to maintain the asset as well. So like investing in maintenance, basically. Integrating environmental considerations in infrastructure investments. So there's an obvious trade-off between infrastructure construction and environmental or social degradation in many cases. So there has to be some consideration for either environmental regeneration or reinvesting into other places if to balance the costs that you are putting on the environment as well. This is quite Asia specific and not, I would say that Asia is leading international standards in finance in in comparison to the West about natural disasters and resilience, just because of all the earthquakes and typhoons and climate change associated risks that we have been experiencing relatively more frequently, I would say, than the West. So building resilience against natural disasters and other risks has to be included in project design and implementation, and integrating social considerations. So not just environmental, but social as well. Are you worsening inequality? How do we make sure that the low income will also benefit from this? Are we properly thinking about that so that we don't exacerbate inequality? Gender equality, are the women being protected in a service like this, or are they being included in the project design if there's systematic inequality that gives women less opportunity, or also differently abled, all these kinds of social minorities also being considered, or the disenfranchised. And of course, in general, public services, you're talking about governments and governance. So through these projects, you can also strengthen the governance in place. They say you should always look back on history and they should look like barbarians to you, right? You're supposed to constantly improve the governance as you go through projects. Okay. All right. So again, I think you already do have a very natural understanding of complexity, in my opinion, compared to other places that I've taught this lecture in. So one dimension of complexity is simply the multi-stakeholder nature of infrastructure. Different organizations are involved at different times. Just that alone makes it complex, and trying to organize that is complex and complicated. And that's why we need socio-technical systems thinking approach so we don't oversimplify problems. Okay. All right, I'm going to go through a little bit quickly the next part since we're running out of time. There was a discussion section here, but maybe I'll just ask a question instead. So now that we know that depending on who you are or what organization you work for, your definition of good will be different. That means your objective is different. So what you want to achieve is different because you're a financer. What you want to achieve as a contractor is different from what you want to achieve as Indian Rail. That will help you define risk more specifically, because you only care about the risk that will affect that thing you want to achieve, all right? So usually I have a discussion here again, but I'll skip this part. I want you to try to have a discussion for the definition of risk. I think this is interesting because everybody knows what risk is, but you've never tried to define it before. It's intuitive. You understand what risk is, but the actual definition is quite hard to think about. So what I ask everybody is, especially if you're an international student, I ask them, what were you considering as a risk before you moved to Japan or moved from your hometown to this country, or when you had to choose this program, what was your risk analysis, right? So you hear lots of things about, well, should I just start working or do my master's? So it's opportunity risk or sunk cost risk. Like I could start working and making money like my friends, or should I stay in school and maybe get more money later? So that's the risk premium of a future opportunity cost. Or geological risk. I'm not from Madras or Chennai. I don't think I'll like the food. Maybe I won't feel at home here. That kind of risk for comfort or social expectations. As well as just time. How much time are you willing to spend not working, I guess, as opposed to studying? And I think depending on your situation, everyone has a unique problem that they had to convince themselves or analyze the risk in that situation. Okay. But here's a definition I like to use sometimes. The PMBOK, is everyone familiar with the PMBOK? I think if you join the industry, people make you read this. It's a very expensive textbook. So don't buy it. Wait for your company to buy it for you. Or I think IT library probably has it. Yeah. So it's a very expensive book. So use it while you have access. If you're a student, if you work for a small company, they will not buy this book for you. So only if you work for a big company or if you are at a big university, I think you have access to this book. But this is their definition of project risk. It's a project management institute, very famous. The definition is an uncertain event or condition that, if occurs, has a positive or negative effect on one or more of the system objectives, such as scope, schedule, cost, or quality. So scope, schedule, cost, quality, I think this is very natural for a lot of the engineering practitioners. Interesting that people mentioned positive or negatively impacted before. So when you hear risk, it's the negative connotation all the time, but risk is both ways. If it's risky, negative, it means it's an opportunity as well. High risk, high reward, or high risk, negative risks. But if the risk exists, it is not just negative. It is something that you can actually exploit as a positive thing if you manage it properly. So again, here people talk about how risky everything is, and everyone has different understanding of risk. So again, it becomes difficult to define and pinpoint risk. Maybe everything is a risk, and I can't make a decision anymore because I just don't know anymore. I think that's okay and natural. Again, going back to the framework I presented earlier about systems, HRSR systems, or infrastructure systems, you can think about, depending on what you want to achieve, so depending on your organization, what is good, what you want to achieve. The only risk you should think about is what's relevant to that goal, the objective, what you're trying to achieve, right? If you're thinking about safety risk, for now, you don't have to think about financial risk. If the money's already there, your goal is to focus on the safety, maybe. And more abstract, you can think there's different risks for technology, or there's different risks in trying to change people's practices and conventions, or for changing organizations, or for financial risk, design risk, construction risk, operation and maintenance risk. They're all different and specific. So these kinds of frameworks can help you make the decision if you're overanalyzing the situation, right? I think many of us are guilty of overanalyzing things. Most people in university are guilty of overanalyzing because it makes us feel comfortable that we're analyzing everything, but it gets dangerous once you start. Too much information prevents you from making a decision as well. So you need to forget the irrelevant information and focus on specific risks. So here are some examples of projects where I think are good examples of specific risks materializing. Here's a financial risk problem that I talk about in Japan. So I study and work in Japan, but again, I'm Canadian. So I like this example from Canadian history. The first railway was constructed in 1836 in Montreal, French-speaking Canada. So the French colony part of Canada before they unified as a country. There's a big railroad boom at the time, America and Canada as well, trying to build as many railroads as they can. So the government wants more railroads, but they can't figure out, the government doesn't have the capacity, but they need the private sector to start building more railroads. So they established the Railway Guarantee Act, 1849. 1836 is the first railway here in Quebec. Here, that's city. I'm from Toronto, which is over here. I don't know if you can see, but a couple hundred kilometers away. But anyways, 1836, 13 years later, the government says, okay, to incentivize the railway sector to build more railways, we will provide a guarantee. The guarantee is like this. We guarantee, it's a bond that guarantees interest payments. Up to 6% per year on half the cost of your construction of a railway that's longer than 120 kilometers, 75 miles, will be guaranteed by the government. So however much money you spent on 60 kilometers, that money plus 6% will give you as a bond payment. For reference, I just looked this up for local reference. So Chennai to Pondicherry is about 140 kilometers apparently. So that's how long, 120. So think about it as the government saying we'll pay 6% on half the cost of that to build the railway line. Okay, and it seems to be quite successful. What do you think happened? This is a long time ago, 100-something years ago. Right. Success? Failure? Who thinks it was a success? Who thinks it's a failure? Yeah, well, I'm talking about risk, so I guess it's a failure. I'll tell you how it failed. Oh, sorry, this is a map. So that's IIT campus. And 140 kilometers. 3 hours by car, apparently. Is that maybe? Okay. Terrible road. Yeah. So what happens? Okay, 10 years after the bond has been announced, the railway tracks do increase substantially from 100 kilometers to over 3,000 kilometers. So that's, I guess it's successful in terms of incentivizing the scale and scaling up. But it's a guarantee, so they have to pay the bond payments. What actually ended up happening was economically unfeasible and excess. The private companies started building railways everywhere, where even if you didn't need it, just to get the 6% interest, and then the government couldn't generate any revenue from the useless railways, but they have to pay 6% interest. After 20 years or so, it's a financial disaster, and they have to default on all of these bonds. Okay, so a very clear example of financial risk in a hasty bond design, like you're saying, securities. If you guarantee too much without any stipulations, people can exploit you for making that promise. So maybe I'll ask you this question specifically because you were mentioning some of the securities and the bonds. But so yeah, if you think about it now, it's why would the government make such a very risky bond? There are many things people could have included in that bond, I think, to protect themselves from the financial risk. Do you have any idea? Do you have any ideas, or what do you think? What would you, if you were advising the government, what would you add as a condition to that bond, or what kind of things do you think you can include in the bond so you're not exposed to so much financial risk?
One thing the government can add is it depends on the serviceability of the platform. Like if high speed train will generate a particular revenue up to the next 2 years, then the bond, then the contract changes automatically. Mm-hmm. If it doesn't generate a revenue, then the contract change automatically. Like it's a kind of a flexible contract. So it's a win situation for government, but kind of lose situation for financer. Mm-hmm. So that one way to approach.
Okay, yes, exactly. So instead of bearing the entire financial risk of very low demand or something, you could say, we'll give you 6%. If you can reach at least this much revenue, we'll pay you this much. If you have more, we'll pay you what we promised. But maybe if it's too low and there's no money to pay you, we can't take that risk if nobody's going to be using the services. So services availability payment is also one type. Okay. Yeah, excellent. Anybody else? Okay. I think that's a good example. It's basically what I write here. So modern day construction bonds or public guarantees are much more sophisticated than that. The Railway Guarantee Act of the 1800s. You have to consider these financial risks and scenarios. The demand projections are also sort of built into the bonds, I would say. One way to do it is obviously don't say you can build the railway wherever you want. You say like, we want people to build this railway, so please bid for that one. So you control the site or you control the location. So only approved projects or financially feasible projects. So you conduct the feasibility project already, and then you do the financing bonds after the feasibility has been conducted. Or another way of saying is solicited or unsolicited projects. So solicited meaning the government wants this. Please help us build this specific railway, and we will give you 6% or 7% or something. Instead of, we don't even know which city we want the railway in, so just please tell us which city you want to build it in. That would be unsolicited type of project. In risk management literature and research, there's also things called upside risk and downside risk, which you just mentioned now. So it's all, like I said, risk is negative connotations to risk, but if you manage risk successfully, you can also make money off of it. So for a government, sometimes they're worried about the minimum. Like, what if nobody uses this line and I can't pay you? So please help me construct this. 1 million people will start using it every year, so I can take that money and start paying you back. But if only 500,000 people use it, I only have half the money. I won't be able to pay you. And then the private sector will say, okay, well, if you can't pay me, I won't build the thing for you, right? So the government has to say, okay, no matter what happens, I will pay you 750,000 people worth. It doesn't matter if 1 million people or 500,000 people use it, I'll give you 750 million people. That's the minimum revenue guarantee type mechanism. That's what it's called. So that helps you manage downside risk, right? It won't go below that. So you're guaranteed the minimum payment. But it goes both ways. What happens if 2 million people use it and you get all that money? Are you only paying them 750,000 worth? Or what about that excess profit? Who's entitled to that? You have to share the upside positive risk as well. So those are two different formulas you have to negotiate with the private sector when you're designing a contract. There's also one called service availability payments, which is popular in America, Japan, also for highways. The expressways in Japan they have the electronic tolls, so they count automatically how many vehicles are using it. So they'll say from between this location, you have to have at least this many vehicles every month, or there can't be a traffic jam for longer than this many hours during this period. Otherwise, we start penalizing you. So the quality of the service guarantees the payment timely, but if you have bad service, we start paying you less. Those kinds of the availability of the service structures the payment is another way of doing it. Profit sharing mechanisms beyond a certain amount of profit is also something that the energy sector does quite well, maybe less so the infrastructure sector. All right, any questions, comments? Yes? Oh yeah, sorry, you can use the mic.
Is the opportunity risk is same as the positive risk? Like we did not take that opportunity and get benefit?
No, I would say they're slightly different. Opportunity risk, is positive risk is more direct in that it's the current risk profile of the probability of you winning or losing, and then opportunity risk is the potential expected utility of a future decision. So I would say it's one step more abstract, opportunity risk compared to like upside risk in this example. Maybe a little bit more direct in terms of the time scale. Again, sort of from a project management perspective, theoretically, there's only 4 things you can do with a risk. You avoid it, you transfer it, you reduce it, or you retain it. I don't know if you're familiar with MISI, but logical thinking, theoretically, these are the 4 only things you can do if you're faced with a risk. Okay. So hopefully now we have been more specific about risk because we know what we want to achieve. So we're specific about risks that matter to us. And now what can we do with those risks? Only 4 things theoretically. Okay, you avoid it, you transfer it, you reduce it, or you retain it. So avoiding is quite easy. You avoid the risk. Right? You eliminate the specific threat. You can eliminate the cause of the risk. You can't eliminate all risk, but you can prevent some risks from happening. Okay. For construction management, risk avoidance is usually in the pre-contract phase. You'll see, like, I refuse to take geological risk or something, or social risk. And it's part of the contract negotiation strategies. Which risks are you willing to take and which are you not willing to take? The government will not take construction risk, or the owner will not take construction risk, and maybe the contractor does not need to take like land acquisition risks, right? That's up to the consultant or the government. Yes. So one way to avoid the opportunity cost of going to school is to not go to school. You refuse to accept that risk, and I go to work, right? I refuse to take the risk, and that's how you get rid of the opportunity cost of going to your higher studies. So again, you get rid of the risk, but you also lose the opportunity, right? You lose the positive impact. Okay, maybe I don't want to avoid the risk completely. Let's transfer the risk to another party. Another way of dealing with the risk is to ask somebody else to take the risk for you. In industries, this is the most common way would be insurance payments. I don't want to take this risk, so I'll pay you to take the risk. If it happens, you pay me back. Right? So you transfer the consequences or you completely transfer the consequences of a risk event occurring to someone other than yourself. It's important to understand that if you transfer risk, it doesn't mean you don't reduce the probability of it occurring. You're simply transferring the risk to somebody else. So lowering the probability of risk is separate from transferring the risk completely. Right? So we have earthquake insurance in Japan, which is legally mandated for lots of big projects or public projects, and also the housing industry. It doesn't mean an earthquake is less likely to occur. It just means the insurance company is now liable to help you if an earthquake occurs. Right? Transfer. So again, I'm repeating, transferring is different from mitigation, which is the third thing you can do. So reducing the probability of risk is risk mitigation. Okay. Oh, sorry. One of the ways of introducing risk reduction is to share the risk with other parties. Sorry, I think this is on the wrong slide. Well, mitigation relates to reducing the expected monetary value of a risk event by reducing the probability of occurrence. So this is in terms of the contract, I guess. Everybody will usually make the risk analysis of high impact, low impact, and high probability, low probability, that kind of a thing. Here you're thinking about how to reduce the probability of risk events occurring. Safety is probably the easiest example to understand. You lower the probability of injuries by investing in safety gear or safety training. Right? That's safety gear will actually reduce the probability of injuries, but not accidents. And then training will reduce the probability of accidents. and also, I guess, injuries. Hazard analysis as well, yes. You can identify specific hazards and then come up with strategies to reduce the risk of something happening at those hazards. Okay. Yes, and the final one is acceptance. So this is the opposite of avoiding. You can just accept that this risk is something that you have to take. Risk retention means you accept the consequences. It could be passive by accepting lower profits in the case that it occurs, or it can be active in some ways. I think construction management, you usually have a contingency budget, right? You have a little buffer because you know something, you know projects never go exactly as planned. So that's part of the budgeting pricing. You could theoretically do it for cheaper, but you need to accept that there's this amount of risk that you want to accept in the project construction. Okay. So for HSR, project acceptance, or accepting risk, for some people, demand risk is also something that they kind of accept in the long term, or also the Hyperloop example you gave. We cannot predict technological innovation at a 50-year timescale. That's something we'll just probably have to accept, and we hope that this will still succeed in the long run. All right. So these are more definitions and not very specific, but I think it's always good to have theoretical, strong definitions for practices that you have to do in your organizations. You think about it. I think it would depend on the definition of sharing. I think in some cases, yes, it would be the same. You're transferring some part of it to another party. But sharing, in a sense, suggests that you both take the consequences as well. In which case, you didn't transfer the consequence of the risk. You just asked someone to share the probability or the impact of it. But if it occurs, it still impacts both of you equally. If it's a true partnership. Yeah. Yes, I agree. I think. Risk, you could implement a risk reduction strategy through risk sharing. I don't know if that makes sense. It's getting very complicated. But the definitions, basically, there is some overlap depending on the situation. Yes, I would say. I'm sorry, I don't have a better example.
So if there are suppose like big projects which they have many kind of risk which are involved, and say if all the parties go into alliance contract, so that time the risk despite of having many risk, if the risk are shared equally, so the risk are reduced from every party's there'll be equal sharing.
This is specific to a single risk event. When you're talking about a contract, in a single contract, there are multiple type of risk events. And when we describe that sharing is a better strategy, it's like, okay, this kind of a risk is better suited for this kind of party. So that's the sharing mechanism that happens across multiple events. This is strategy for a single type of risk event. So that's why the term gets confused. Yeah.
Exactly. Because for some people, the alliance, some people's definition of the alliance contract would be the client taking unnecessary risk. Like up until now, it used to be the contractor risk, but now they're just part of the team. But again, it's questionable if they are taking that risk or if they're doing anything about it. Okay, sorry, I'm getting off topic. But excellent question, thank you very much. Important distinction to make about specific or other risks in a contract, multiple risks within a contract. Okay, financial risks was what I talked about before, the risk mitigation strategies, but the second case I want to talk about is demand risks. So we just mentioned earlier on demand forecasts and what happens if we're not reaching the ridership we wanted to do. This is a very, very key topic in all public transportation, I think, research, and very important for high-speed rail as well. Okay. The story I'm telling today is okay. So there's lots of financial risk. These projects are very expensive. How do we, manage financial risk? I think a lot of people will naturally say, oh, "Don't worry, we'll make money. Like just make sure we get enough revenue. If you can get enough revenue, that will take care of the financial risk, right? We overcome financial risk by generating sufficient revenue. Supply and demand is met. We will get enough revenue to pay for the line. Okay, HSR lines and services in supply will quench the demand, and economic benefits will be enjoyed by all. Okay, so the problem with this is it's a supply demand. You're thinking, okay, so the demand is there in India, so let's build the line and the revenue will be generated and it should be a success. Once this is similar to Japan, if this succeeds, the demand should be in other places. Let's increase the supply and to answer the demand, and then we'll just keep growing in revenue and growing in economic growth, right? So higher supply, higher demand, not enough supply, maybe not enough demand if depending on the price, but that's the formula that most simplified economics might suggest, okay? The story behind the Japanese experience, at least, was that the estimates early on were high, and they were not meeting the initial demand estimates. But very quickly, within a decade, the high-speed rail ridership surpassed estimated demand, and they were on track, so it was good news. But that was just one of the lines. Okay, in Japan, they have other regional lines, and they were not doing good. So you have the government saying, okay, Tokyo Osaka is a success. Let's replicate this in other regions. It's not that simple, right? You do not see the same story happening. So demand density was not happening in other regions. So I'm just going to end today with this story. I'll talk a little bit more about this tomorrow because I'm trying to get the systems thinking framework into your mind again. What I'm trying to say is that it's quite simple to think, okay, we have enough demand, so let's just get the supply there, and then we should be able to generate revenue. And then if there's not enough supply, we just pump in more supply and we should get more revenue. What happened in Japan is clearly different. Just because the demand is there theoretically and you create it, you might not get the revenue that you wanted because your demand forecast might be wrong. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that the supply that you're providing impacts the demand, right? The induced demand that you're seeing. In the best case scenario, you will induce demand if it's a good service, I guess. But if everybody is very unhappy with how expensive it is and how uncomfortable it was, or how the train was delayed, nobody will take the train, and it will be a negative spiral, and it will have a negative effect on the demand. Only if your supply can induce demand through successful quality services you will continue to create a better demand, which you should then answer with better supply, and you cycle through and keep improving the system. So it's not just supply divided by demand. It's supply impacts demand, and demand will impact supply, and you're constantly balancing while trying to expand both in terms of capacity. This is the systems type thinking that we're going to try to emphasize tomorrow, and then through the models as well. This is the feedback that I really want to drill into your brain. Another way to think about it, I just made this slide this morning, so it's a bit messy, sorry. If you remember this system framework, right, that Nikhil Sensei created, infrastructure systems are complex, and HSR systems are complex in this way. You have to operate, maintain, evolve, and develop, and the money and the external factors like policy and the market conditions, all right? So from an operator perspective, you have direct control over the supply. You can impact the quality of the supply in this equation, but in many ways the demand depends on the response that the market or the user will have based on the supply decisions made. So in many ways that's beyond your control. You can increase the probability of it having a positive impact on your system, but there are other policy dimensions, legal dimensions, market conditions, like I said, wars, material shortages, different laws changing, political party changing, political support disappearing. Anything can happen outside the scope of your organization that could also potentially impact your ability to manage that risk, okay, on the demand side. And so that's what we will talk about tomorrow. I'll give a couple more case studies, not just about Japan. I'll give more details about Japan actually, but we'll talk about Europe and China as well. And again, the point is we want to think about, okay, what's similar in India, what's different in India, what does it mean, what do we have to do to face either the same challenges, or are we facing different challenges that need to be addressed with similar solutions? These are the questions I hope to explore with you tomorrow. All right. I'll show different problems, different contexts, and different solutions. And it's interesting to think about the combination because sometimes you can address the same problem with a different solution. Sometimes you can address a different solution with the same problem. You can address the same or different problem with the same solution. And yeah, I think the systems thinking approach will help you be a bit flexible about that as a framework. Okay, I think that's just about time.
Just to re-emphasize on the whole messaging again. So today we just looked at the project govern in general, what is good. We have not, although the examples that Professor was given was also more specific to high-speed railway, but these are still general principles. And tomorrow, I think we will relook some of these principles being applied to different contexts and how the evolution of high-speed railway systems happened around the world. Of course, both of us know a little bit more about the Japanese system, so there's a lot more focus on that. But then I think we have covered a lot more on that. And then we will go more into philosophy part of it. Okay, how current practices are not really good, and then we'll go into the modeling part, and it will give you a little bit more hands-on to you. So yeah. Don't worry if it is not making too much sense. What class is this? There's no high-speed railway. There's no systems thinking yet. It's to gradually build the foundations, right? So yeah, that's it. Tomorrow onwards, again, 2 to 6 with half an hour break in between. Thank you so much for patiently